Yo, what's up guys, Insane Game Freak here to actually bring you a video game related video because for those who know from the Black Friday stream, which was about 2 weeks ago, I recently purchased a 3DS, and the first game I actually got for the 3DS is Icarus Uprising, and already beaten the main story. Haven't 100% it yet, but I've beaten the main story. I think I'm about 70 something, 60 or 70 something percent through, so at least in terms of doing everything. But I finished the main story, so I figured I'd review the game and talk about it. And just to warn you, this will have spoilers in it, so if you don't want any spoilers on the game, then don't watch this. I think this game actually came out, didn't this game come out like at the beginning of this year? So it's not even a year old yet. So, no, if you don't want any spoilers, get out. Anyways, let's get into it. Okay. So, the first thing I'm going to really talk about is the story. And the reason why this game even became the B was purely just because when they put Pit in Smash Bros. Brawl, apparently he was received well enough for Sakurai to be like, you know what? Let's bring Icarus back into the mainstream. And honestly, with this game, we kind of want to see him now more. Like, literally, this game in itself has made me go, alright, I want a fucking Wii U title for it now. Because, like, the game is so much fun. But to stick with the story, the basic premise is Pit and Palutena versus Medusa. And then after a plot twist versus Hades. That was the first spoiler. I'm just warning you. But anyways, that's really the plot. You're really just you think you're fighting Medusa up until, I think, chapter 9. And then the rest of the game up to, like, chapter 23 or 24. You're fighting Hades. You're going against Hades. Now, mind you, there's some other villains in there too, like the Aram and Viridi, and pretty much, and even Patu, which we'll get to it when we get to it. But the whole premise is just to fight Hades. Now, when it comes to the story itself, it's really simplistic, which is a Nintendo title. I don't really expect complicated plots, nor do I really need them, because at the end of the day, it's still a freaking video game. Now, I think everyone's praised the hell out of this game for this, but I'm going to just jump on that bandwagon. I love the comedy, the breaking of the fourth wall, the interactions between stages. Now, a lot of people kind of went, I think IGN put on their review, that the one thing they didn't really like was the fact that after a while, the talking kind of gets annoying. Bullshit. Complete bullshit. I love, it really gives these guys characters, even though they have existed beforehand, considering the first and only time we've seen them before this was in an NES game versus a 3DS title, considering that's the major jump in technology. I like how they really fleshed out each of these characters, because it wasn't like Pit talked in Smash Brothers. So, Palutena is, even though Palutena is kind of like Pit's, like, guardian in a sense, goddess, obviously, she's the goddess, but still, she's like, I love how you have all these gods, and then you have like Pit, and all these gods talk so much shit about each other and about Pit. Like, it's painful. Even Palutena and Pit are going back and forth like all the time. Like, even, I think there's like, I'm not going to spoil too much in the later stages, but in like the early stages, there are like scenes where like, I think it's like chapter 2 or 3 when he's going to fight, when he's fighting Dark Lord Gal, and it's like, and Palutena be like, if you move to your left, you'll see something that might help you out. And Pit's like, wow, how did you know that? Palutena's like, because of my all-seeing eye. And he's like, really? He's like, yeah, I can also see what's in your heart, Pit, so you better not be thinking anything naughty. And he's like, wait, no, I was... And she just starts laughing, like, I'm just fucking with you. He's like, yeah, I was kidding too. And she's just like, yeah, okay. And what makes it even worse is that as you get further into stages, some of the bosses, actually I think the majority of the bosses that you end up fighting at the end of those stages are talking with Pit and Palutena throughout the stages. So you have like Pandora. When you get to Pandora stage, she's mentioning a whole bunch of stuff. They even mention like certain things about the level design. Like, for example, there's like a portion in Pandora stage where there's like this, rotocycle, and Pit and Palutena are like, wait, you have no, like, human form. Why the fuck did you make a racetrack in here? He's like, well, I forget the reason. He was like, well, maybe because I had the free time and I wanted to have something easier for my servants to roll around in. He's like, but you have no hands. He's like, just shut up. Like, there's a lot of random jokes and shit. Even when you have like Viridi and Hades like talking shit to each other. And like, and then when later on in the game when you get Patu, and for those who don't know who Patu is essentially Dark Pit, but it's like Pit 2, but instead of saying TWO, it's like TOO because they're trying to be funny. And like the first time you're in the stage with Patu, and he's like, "Hey Patu," he's like, "What? What did you call me?" Like, I like that kind of humor. And I know there's even a moment where they break the fourth wall and reference another Nintendo franchise. This one's in the way later stages where like Viridi is helping Pit due to a plot twist I'm going to get to when I complain about the story in a minute. There's like a section where they're fighting these monsters, and I forget their actual name in the game, but they look like Metroids from like, you know, the Metroid franchise. And Pit makes a reference to it, and you see Viridi freak out and go, "Shh, no, no." And she's like, "What? I just said they look like Metroids." "Shh, you can't say that, Pit. That gaming franchise and this gaming franchise are two totally different franchises." She's like, he's just like, but they look like Metroids. "Pit, you're gonna ruin everything." I love stuff like that. Like, in terms of the dialogue and the voice acting, I love that. And it gave all these characters a pretty decent back. Like, I know who each of these characters are. They even make jokes about other things, like the way Pit heals in this game is through hot springs that he can randomly find a level. And Pit always freaks out and he's like, "Oh my god, it's a hot spring." Paul Tanner's like, he's like, "You can't say that when you're the only person I know who jumps into a hot spring with his clothes on." Like, and then Viridian's like, Viridian's like, "Why? What is it with you in hot springs?" And he's like, "Well, what is it with you in the freaking Mother?" It was like, what, Mother Earth or some shit. It was ridiculous. But anyways, in terms of like the dialogue and everything, I enjoyed the hell out of that. Now, with the story itself, as I said, is really simplistic. But the one thing I will say there are two things about the story that irked the shit out of me. The first thing is actually an overall problem with the game and kind of encompasses the second part. The game has, alright, look, I think there's like 23 or 25 chapters, somewhere around that margin. And you know, you're doing missions pretty much for each one. I mean, it's leading up to the fight with Medusa, and then later on the fight with like Hades and shit. But the thing I have against that is that there are points in these missions that you feel like the mission, like, alright, I'll put it this way. For example, and for those who don't know who Viridi is like the goddess of nature. Like, her whole thing, like, originally it's like, after we find out it's Hades they're fighting, it's like Pit versus Hades. And then there's like this subsection of Viridi that pops in the middle of the story going, well, Viridi wants to destroy the humans anyway because, you know, humans are selfish creatures and we're sick bastards and we're destroying everything anyway. We need to do a reset bomb. Literally, that's what the thing she's using to just try to kill the humans is a reset bomb. And the whole thing is this, that there are portions in the game where we're now focusing our attention on Viridi and trying to destroy her forces. And there are like chapters where your mission is to do this, and then at the end of the mission, you end the mission and start the next one to find out that no, you didn't do everything and you had to do something else. What I mean by pretty much what this boils down to is that the game sometimes feels like it's intentionally extending parts of sections to essentially, like, the story itself feels like it's being drawn out through these chapters because it's like, oh, well, you're going to stop Viridi in this chapter or in this chapter or in this chapter. The same thing with the Aram. When you fight the Aram, it's like, oh, we got to stop the Aram in this chapter or this chapter or this chapter. Like, it feels like things are being extended for the sake of gameplay time. Now, mind you, the gameplay is fun, but I'm just saying that's kind of an annoying thing. And especially when you can notice it. Like, I notice it through a chapter. Like, I'll beat a chapter and be like, okay, now we're moving on to the next thing, right? Nope, there's this one other thing you have to do first, and then you'll beat that and be like, oh, there's this one other thing you have to do. Now, mind you, the worst it ever got was like 3 chapters of shit, especially the Aram part. Now, this next thing is actually a plot point. But I feel like it probably can be, the reasoning behind it is probably because of the same, you're trying to extend the game through random shit. Let me explain. I believe it's like chapter like 20 something when you beat the Aram finally, when you fight Pyron and the Aram combined and you beat him, the chapter right after that, we have now jumped in time by 3 fucking years. You find this out in that stage. Apparently, over the course of 3 years, Pit has been trapped in a ring. His body's been killing motherfuckers. Palutena is attacking the humans now, and Hades, and Viridi, and shit has gone to hell. And the way you start the stage is that you're like in darkness and Pit is confused, and then all of a sudden you're picked up by this little girl, and then you can control her body, and then you're picked up by this dog who you can control his body, and then you end up with Magnus, which is the only human character in the game. And I'm kind of just sitting there going, why in the fuck are we controlling Magnus for no... What the fuck is going on? Because the thing is, it's explained through that chapter and the later chapters that apparently Pit... in an earlier chapter, when I believe they destroyed something called the Arlong, that was actually a prison. And there was this thing called, like, the Kindred Kid, I believe it was called. And it takes possession of people. And apparently it took possession of Palutena, which fucked up her morals and everything. And then we're supposed to assume that apparently Palutena then, you know, the possessed Palutena took over, like fuck Pit over, took his soul out of his body and trapped it in a ring for 3 years. What? And the funny thing is, you don't get cutscene to explain this. I'm supposed to assume that's what happens. Like, there's a part in the stage where Pit's like, well, why the hell was I trapped in a ring then if Palutena was possessed? And why don't I remember it? It was like, because I guess, maybe you said Palutena's put you in bad situations before. Maybe that's what happened here. So we're assuming that apparently Palutena trapped his soul into a ring. We don't know. We're not expressed through cutscene what happened. There's like no cutscene to explain most of that. I mean, it's one of those things where I'm just kind of like, you could have just shown something. Like, you could have shown some cutscene even after you beat that chapter with the Arlong in it, like when you beat that thing that looks like a second moon, and maybe show a clip of the little Kindred Kid coming out of it. I mean, they show it in the chapter where Viridi's explaining what's happened in 3 years, but just the fact that there's a random 3-year time skip, and obviously the gods aren't going to look any different, and Magnus, which is the only human in the game, doesn't look any different, but it's just so fucking random. We don't even see the ramifications for why it was 3 years. It's just said to be 3 years. Why is it 3 years? It doesn't even look like Hades has like accomplished anything more, or neither has Viridi. And I'm just kind of like, why is the time skip 3 years? It wouldn't even bug me that this happened, but the fact that it's taking place over 3 years and you're telling me nothing has really changed? 3 fucking years! What the fuck? Why did it need to be 3 years? Also, just one other plot point that got on my nerves. In the I think it's the second stage when you fight Dark Lord Gal. After you beat him, you realize that Magnus apparently knows Dark Lord Gal, and that Dark Lord Gal is actually a woman in the armor. They never explain any of that, which is bullshit. I was like, so Magnus knows Dark Lord Gal, and Dark Lord Gal is a woman. Is there some type of history there? Is there a backstory? They even mentioned it in the fight that they know each other. Why is this not expressed? And what's funny is when you fight them again later, Dark Lord Gal now talks like the woman that was inside her, but we still don't get any fucking explanation to what their relationship was and what happened, which kind of irks me. I wouldn't mind if it was like a bonus, or it's not. It's just kind of like a random thing that's there, and I'm like, what the fuck? But I think I've rambled on enough about the story, and this is technically a game review. But that's just a few things I wanted to talk about. The second thing is that we should go into the gameplay. Now, this is honestly where the game's biggest flaw comes in. A lot of people hate the control for this game. Now, here's my thing. The control has its problems. I don't think... The problem with this game is that it doesn't have that whole pick up and play value because of how weird it is. This is what you have to... This is what it is. Analog stick, control pick. The D-pad is used to select your items, and you push down to use one of the items, the abilities you get from the abilities you put on your weapon that you have. And then you have to use the fucking stylus to use your reticle to fire and aim at monsters and whatnot. Oh, and you also shoot with like the trigger button, like the left trigger button. That's the default controls. I don't think anyone I know who actually uses the default controls for that, because honestly the default controls will bite you in the ass. That's just, I'm sorry. It's not, and they even give you a stand with the game because they know how weird that is. They thought that was the most optimal control. The problem is, if you're like me, your left hand gets cramped up when you're moving this and trying to fire at the same time. This doesn't feel like it would be a pain. You can do this on a normal controller. But on a 3DS, it's a bitch. And the thing is that that's not the most way. I mean, now mind you, it is not the easy. It's not a game you can just pick up and play because of its controls. But once you figure out your own settings, because luckily this game has multiple different ways you can play it. In the sense that it has a lot of different ways you can do control schemes and set different options. For me personally, my best way of doing it is firing with like the buttons on the side, moving with pit, and then just using my finger for a reticle. Honestly, I don't even really use the stylus or any of that shit for like the flying sections. And I guess I should explain that. Icarus Uprising has two different gameplay styles. You have the on-rail shooting sections when you're in the air flying around and shit, and then you have the land sections. Most people praise the hell out of the air sections and hate the land sections. And honestly, if you compare them both, the air sections are better. I mean, and I'm not really dissing the land sections because the land sections are fun, but the air sections have really no problems to them where you can see problems in the land sections. Even though I don't think it's as ridiculous as some people make it sound like, because I could play most of the land sections fine, give or take like 2 or 3 levels because of some bullshit I want to mention in a second. The first thing is, in which this kind of irks the shit out of me too, there's no jump button in Kid Icarus Uprising, so you're relying on these little circle things that are allowed to like propel you in the air. They're kind of like automatic jump functions when you need them, which wouldn't really bother me that much until you realize that because in the way the land battle is that you have to constantly like use the stylus, or for me my finger, flick the side of the screen to change the camera, because obviously we don't have a second controller stick, analog stick to be able to use the camera, so you actually got to use your finger to do the damn camera. And this game makes it painfully apparent that there should have been 2 analog sticks. Like when you see how ridiculous, it's not like offensive. Like the game is playable and I can have fun with the game even without that second analog stick, without the using the camera. But this is like one of those games where you're just kind of like, please let this get a Wii U port, because I don't want to fucking play this with just one goddamn analog stick. Literally, this is the game that makes you go, oh, why did they not put an analog stick on here? Even though to me it's not like that offensive, this is the game that out of all the 3DS games, I'm betting this will be the game that everyone be like, yeah, they should have put a second analog stick on there. Now, with the on-rail shooter sections, all you're doing is firing. You're dodging and firing. It's like the easiest shit in the world. Personally, if you line the reticle up with pit and just move around with the circle, you don't even really need to use the reticle. I don't really use the reticle. The only time you're going to really need to use it is if you're going for ridiculous high scores or you're trying to kill everything. But just getting through the stages, you're not going to really need it. And even in the harder stages, I didn't really need it that much anyway. Like I could beast through the stages and still kill the majority of the enemies. But the land sections, because you have to control that fucking camera with the damn reticle, it's kind of annoying to do, and it's not the most relaxed control scheme. And this isn't really offensive in the fighting sections. It's more offensive in the fucking platforming sections, especially in the later stages. There's this one stage where you're climbing, what's his name, Penthus, the dude who creates the sacred armor. You had to go up to him to get a new sacred armor because Hades fucked up your old one. And there's like these sections where like the wind is blowing insanely hard and you have to get through that section by running. But the camera, obviously you have to manually use the camera at the same time. And it's just like, that shit was frustrating. Like I was on that section for like 10 minutes because I'm just like, oh my god, let me get through. It was like, there are just sections in the game that are like that, and I'm just kind of like, Jesus Christ, help me, help me. The one thing I really do like about the game is the variety of weapons you get, because one of the big things about this game is that you have the option of getting weapons, different types of weapons, mind you, and then on top of getting different types of weapons, you have the ability to fuse them. Fusing them give you different types of weapons with different values and different abilities on them. I swear to God, if you're anal about killing everything, get the weapons that have automatic homing shots as their abilities. Mind you, there's like 6 different abilities each weapon can have. Only the higher level ones usually have the abilities, whereas the lower level ones don't. If you can get the ones with the homing shot, you're fucking straight. And people are like, and I heard someone say that there is no difference between weapons. Bullshit. Complete bullshit. You try using a bow to the little fucking oracles that float around you and fire, there's a difference. Because for one, there's a shit ton of differences. Because you have and I like the variety of weapons. It's not just things, it's not just bows and guns and shit. You have those, but you also have clubs and swords and shit. There's a good variety between the weapons where it's like, even if you don't want to fuse anything, and they even have like that cool little like arm thing, like, and you even get like weapons that are based on some of the enemies you fight. Like there's a weapon called the Pandora arm, and it looks like Pandora. Pandora was an arm, and it was ridiculous. It was freaking awesome. I love wrecking niggas with that shit. But in terms of the gameplay itself, it's solid. You know, it's solid towards enjoyable. There are frustrating things in it. Yes, there are, but you have a lot more fun with it than bad times with it for me. The good times outweigh the bad times. Plus that everything else in the game is fun as shit, so I can't really hate on it. Also, the online is fun as hell too. I think you have 2 different types. I don't remember. I think it's like free for all, and then it's like daybreak or something, where essentially you have one where it's like light versus dark. Essentially, dark versus light, like, you know, pit and pit 2. And you're fighting each other, and the whole thing about the battle is you're kind of just beating each other up until one of you turns into dark pit, and then when the other one turns into light pit. And essentially when you kill dark pit or pit, the other team wins. Like, you're essentially killing players until one of them turns into dark pit, or you're killing players until one of them turns into pit. And then if you can kill pit or dark pit first, then your team wins. The free-for-all is just what it sounds like. It's fucking free-for-all. Now, a lot of people don't like this purely just because the problem with this mode is that it's mainly land battle stuff, and considering land battle is the weaker of the 2 modes, of the 2 versions of gameplay, people don't like it as much, but to me it was still fun as hell, and the connections are great. Like, I haven't run into any lag with it, so the internet, you know, the Wi-Fi is great for me, so is there really anything else to mention? Not really. That's essentially all my grievances and like pros and negatives with the game. So would I say it's still a good 3DS title? Yeah, it's still a good 3DS title. I don't know if I would go out of my way and say it's a AAA title, but it's a AA title if nothing else. And in regards if it's AAA or AA, it's still worth buying at full price. I do not regret buying this game at full price. And if a game can do that, then I'm considering it a good game. And I really hope there's a console version or a sequel. Either one, I don't really mind. And maybe have some more story to it. And maybe fix those 2 maybe you could actually base the second story around the Dark Lord Gal stuff. Like have that a part of the game, you know. Or maybe introduce more human characters. Because Pit only interacts with Magnus as the only human. Everyone else he's interacting with are fucking gods. Or like servants to the gods. And I think they're gods themselves. The game has a lot of character. It really fleshed out these characters we've only seen like once. And gave them a voice and a personality and attitude. I love the connection between the characters. The gameplay is fun. There's really not much else to say. You will have fun with this game. So, if you own a 3DS and you haven't touched Kid Icarus yet, what is wrong with you? The control, map it out to your liking. Literally, the first thing you should do when you get into that game is go into training and figure out which mode works for you. Because I love the fact that they have a training mode right there. And one other thing I will mention. You're going to see a section when you first start your game called like Goddess Offering. Just so you know right now, it says like if you give money to the gods, they'll bring the spirit closer to you. That's just a 3DS gimmick thing. There is no benefit to doing that. You accomplish nothing. Absolutely nothing. I think even Sakurai himself said that was just for bullshit. Like, there's no point to that. So For any of you those wondering about that little tidbit, no. Don't waste any hearts on it. Unless you're just kind of a fanboy and you want Palutena and Viridian to be as close to you as possible. And if you are, it's fucking cool. Just saying. Anyways. That's pretty much my review on the game. Good game. Totally should get it. Anyways. If you like this, thanks. That sounded so bad. If you like this, thanks. Thanks, guys. Anyways. If you enjoyed this review, please leave a comment about the game if you played it or if you're thinking about getting it. Any thoughts or comments on the game, totally welcome. Any video responses are welcome if you reviewed the game or if you have different opinions or if you have any type of discussion you have when you're about the game and the story, let me know. Anyways, this has been the Insane Game Freak. Life's a game, play to win. And I'll catch you guys later. Peace. Nintendo, we want more!